Would you join me in prayer? Father God, we ask that you would lend comfort to the victims of this latest act of in an American school. We would ask that you would highlight the brokenness of this girl in her life and how people living outside of your plan helped lead to this, that it's not just that inflection moment. We would ask your mercy, as hard as it is to ask for your mercy in this case, on this girl who I have to believe has committed herself to eternity without you, unless in your perfect mercy you've decided otherwise. But I can't imagine it, and to be honest, Lord, I don't want that for her. I hate to say that. Lord, comfort the people who should have known, maybe who did know, and convict them that other things they know must come out. We do need to talk about this. We will talk about the lawlessness that was in the show title, a man succeeding in stealing a woman's home, and there to me is a direct connection. Broken world, broken circumstances. We'll talk about this with the help of God Almighty and with our help from our friends at Bulwark Capital Management, knowyourriskradio.com. Lord, guide our conversation.
The Todd Herman Show is 100% disapproved by big pharma, technocrats, and tyrants everywhere. No. From the high mountains of free America, here's the Emerald City exile, Todd Herman.
Today is the day the Lord has made, and these are the times through which God has decided we shall live. There's an account on Twitter called Pagliacci the Hated. It's run apparently by a woman named Anna Slots, and Andy No points this out. Andy's a trusted, I think, investigative journalist. I think he's trustworthy. He was tracking the latest incident of a disturbed child of digital upbringing to go take lives in an American school. And as is always the case these days, the focus is on that last act, those last steps, the acquisition of the gun, the decision to go to the school, the starting of this Twitter account, which is relatively recent, pictures she took, including the OK sign in the bathroom, pointing down at her military shoes as she got ready to go kill people. And it's been largely confirmed that it was Twitter that broke this story. Pagliacci the Hated, Anna's website. She broke the details, the identity of this, or alleged, who was, I think we can say, herself. And she did that, Anna did, 5 hours before Reuters News, the first Mockingbird media outlet to mention this and to get these details that they probably scraped from Anna. Anna also got access to this manifesto. So the shooter, and I won't be saying her name because I think she wanted her name said. She was fascinated with people who went into schools and kids, and she idealized them and idolized them. So I'm not going to give her that same status in this show. Other places will do it. They'll make sure her name is well known. And other kids who are equally sick can look and see, look how famous she is. Look what a difference she made. Speaking of differences, the guy who went in a CEO in broad morning light, but not quite broad daylight, but early morning in public, he started a conversation. You have Senator Chris Murphy, a backbench senator, saying that this has started a conversation, an important conversation. He wants to be part of this. We, of course, had the defense of this kid, this young man. We had people from the Bulwark saying he's sexy and he's hot, but not as hot as the Boston bomber, who was much, much hotter. We had the defense of his actions. We had Lizzie Warren saying you can only push people so far. In this case, in these murders, an instant call for gun control. No curiosity about, hey, was she on SSRIs? Because most kids who do this are on SSRIs, that's antidepressants, or coming off of them. And many families who've had kids on SSRIs or are in the process of coming off have to look at these stories differently. And it goes like this. Thank God that's not our kid. These drugs are known to cause homicidal intent. Known by whom? The drug companies. How do I know? Because they're in the inserts for these drugs. Usually the psychiatrists who push these, don't talk about the fact that they cause, intent, intent. I'm very curious what drug she was on, because I'm guessing there was some. The Mockingbird media has already focused on those last actions, the acquisition of the gun, getting the gun into school, but they do not want to talk about so much of this girl's life that's in this manifesto. There's also this. Anna Slatz talked to her boyfriend, but there's something absolutely spooky and empty about her boyfriend and their relationship. Now, she was 17, or probably 15, not 17. So you could say she's too young to have a boyfriend. Fair enough. That's not the spooky part. I'll tell you about the spooky part here in a second, because it absolutely speaks to a child raised digitally with all the care and all the love that an iPhone can offer. It's fake. We are not meant to live alone. God has said it is not good that man or woman or girl is alone, nor are we meant to have our bodies treated as products, right? That is not what doctors are called to do. I talk about psychiatrists pushing drugs. They shouldn't do that. It should be the very last step they take. The things that we do as healers, I'm not a healer, but healers should do, is the least invasive thing possible. So if instead of, say, having your ankle cut open or your knee cut open, and someone going in with a needle and stitching a little thing of cartilage back together, hoping it will stay together, which it probably won't. Cartilage is weird that way. Or let's say getting into your lower back and scraping the tendons in your lower back and the nerves in your lower back. Instead of doing that, which has sometimes really serious complications, what if instead you go to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico for about a week, if that. You go into a hyperbaric chamber a couple times, which is really sitting and watching a movie in a high oxygen environment. Then you sit in a seat while a Harvard certified surgeon injects you with ethically gathered stem cells from placentas and umbilical cords, and that injection takes all of about 5 minutes. 5 minutes because the doctor will talk with you, answer your questions. If you have more questions or you're nervous about the needle, it can take 15 minutes or 20 minutes. It's up to you. You don't have any questions? He inserts the needle, and you go back into the hyperbaric chamber. And those stem cells enter your body, and they immediately attack any inflammation, and then they go about building. They'll put that into your knee, into your cartilage, and it can help your cartilage regrow. That's what they do. That's what those cells do. Or go get cut open and hope that you don't have to take 12, 14, 60 weeks to recover. Go see if they can help you. Go to renew.healthcare. It's renue.healthcare. renue.healthcare. Please, it's important. Tell them you're part of the Todd Herman Show family, either podcast, YouTube, radio show, what have you. And they'll make sure to tell you if they can help you. It's renue.healthcare. Anna discovered in their conversation with this boyfriend a very spooky fact. They'd been dating for 2 years. They'd never been in the same room. They'd never touched hands. They'd never felt that spark of actually being next to someone to whom you're attracted. I'm not saying that. I'm wild about 15-year-olds having boyfriends anyway. But that spark, the touch of a hand, the brushing of a shoulder, the nearness, the human proximity, never happened. He lives in a different country. But that was her boyfriend. She also discovered from the pages of this girl's writing some facts about the families. And I understand because I can hear you. There's a weird thing because we're live right now and there's a live audience in addition to people watching and or listening later. I can hear you. Yeah, what about the victims' families? Right. Right. They had their family relationships, and perhaps they were beautiful and solid. Perhaps this teacher who was beautiful and solid probably was. Why am I focusing on the? Because it is the who reflects the world. It is the world God warned us about. Lawless, loveless. God said that the love of many will grow cold. I don't know that it gets more cold than what went on in this girl's life. This has been backed up by court documents. Anna has court documents that prove some of these records. She writes, okay, now that I've gotten some assurances that I'll not be suspended for posting these final pages, here are pages 5 and 6, the final 2 pages of the manifesto. I don't know that I want to get into the manifesto. It is straight out of Discord hell. And Discord is a gaming platform. It used to be a gaming platform. Now it's a negativity platform. And it's an extremist platform. It's a very dark place. And this girl uses all the language of Discord and all the euphemisms of Discord, including some very, very obscene, straight-up views that all men need to die. She needs to murder men. She uses the N-word. She talks about the only hope for society is all men to be. I know that there's a rumor that she was gender dysphoric. Andy, no, if he had discovered that, he would share that. Andy is very open on that topic, very good on that topic. He says she wasn't. The the girl talks about her extremely difficult relationship with her father. Notes that her parents had divorced multiple times, that her mother struggled with drug addiction. She also implies her father was an alcoholic. She expresses that she'd been bullied at school, something her boyfriend emphasized to me as being a big factor in her pessimism about her life and anger towards other people. Court records I've seen show she's telling the truth about the repeat divorces in her family and ongoing legal battles between her and her mother and her father. God did not design us for brokenness. He designed us for perfection. We chose brokenness. This girl talks about not being wanted or loved by her family. Kids will do some things that most adults won't do. Kids are willing to amp up. They're willing to take more and more extreme actions until they are seen. Do you remember last week we began to talk about what kids and people in general, people in trauma mind, need to have, the steps they need to have? Do you remember this? They need to be seen, heard, understood. They need to know that you're delighted to be able to there to help them and that you're going to bring a bigger brain, in the case of Christians, God's brain into this to help solve problems. Until they are seen and heard, they cannot be understood, and until they feel understood, they cannot get out of trauma mind. This girl, in my judgment, was trapped in trauma mind. She was online all the time. She was in Discord all the time. The language this 15-year-old girl is spewing sounds a lot like the language of an angry, drug-addicted 20-year-old male, an incel, which means an involuntary celibate, because no women will have him. I'm betting that we're going to find out eventually, and it won't be from the Mockingbird media, that she was on a series of SSIs. She idolized a couple of specific killers. They were in her manifesto. The boyfriend who never held her hand, never stood in a room with her, never brushed against her shoulder, never touched her hair. He apparently didn't have the opportunity to stop her. She sent him the manifesto after. He got it after the shootings had occurred. And yet, he must have known. She was idolizing these previous murderers. If I were a member of the family of one of these people, I would hate Todd Herman for focusing on this. But the reason I focus on it is this never should have gotten to this point. It's not about the guns. It's about an environment where a girl like this can be so evidently lost, so evidently abused, neglected, bereft of human contact, and no one leaps in. There's an amazing thing that happens to kids who feel unwanted when they are suddenly wanted. People who seek to abuse kids, to take their loneliness and harness it for money, to use the children's bodies, they know that. They know that you look for the stragglers. They know that you look for the lonely kids. They know that you go to them and say, you're perfect. You're far more wise than your peers. And they know that that loneliness built up makes it easy to take advantage of those kids. Caregivers should recognize this because we can leap into these circumstances. And my challenge for society is this. If people are not finding ways to help this generation, shut up. Don't talk about DC. Don't talk about the state of the country. Don't talk about foreign affairs. Shut up. Because in your sphere of control or influence, you have young people in your midst. And you might not be a person gifted to work with young people. So how about supporting the staff of people who do? How about going and volunteering behind the scenes? I don't have time. You're watching this. If you have time to watch this, you have time to volunteer with kids, because I'd rather have you turn this off and never come back and go volunteer with kids. I've seen it when there are boys, because I work with boys, who are unwanted at home. And I don't mean kind of unwanted. I mean unwanted. I mean dropped off at a church event an hour and a half before the event starts. So they hang out alone in the lobby on their phones. And sometimes they're picked up an hour after the event closes. Even as staff is texting the parents saying, hey, we have to go. I've seen that loneliness, and I've seen what happens when a well-meaning adult simply says this, man, I'm really glad you're here. I know you get dropped off by your parents. I know you don't want to be here. I know this is a chore for you, but dude, I am so glad you're here. And I've seen those kids all of a sudden begin to seek out that adult company. Adults who mean them well, who are not there to take advantage. I've also seen in our church group, girls sitting off by themselves, alone, stragglers, no female friends. And I've watched. As I've become concerned about them, I see them sitting by themselves. I am not supposed to go talk to them. Other than to do this, walk by 20 feet away from them. Hey, hi, pardon me. I've seen those girls look up. I'm feeling really concerned about you. Are you okay? And this look on their face that, oh my gosh, someone is paying attention to me. Even if it's an old man in his 50s. When I say, hey, I would really appreciate it if you'd let me go get a female staff member to come and chat with you. And I've heard this, I'm fine, I just don't have any friends. Girls don't like me. I've just had to look at them and say, that sucks. That's really hard. I would really appreciate it if you'd let me go get a female staff member. Okay. We're called to care for the least of these. We began the show with a prayer for the victims' families. I stand by that prayer. I also stand by my statement. We don't get to complain about the state of the world when we're not willing to do what we can within our sphere of influence to change the state of the world. And I have news for us. Washington, D.C. doesn't care. Our help is not coming from President Trump, though he will do a good job at righting the country. I believe he has that in them. He has a solid B- in terms of his nominees. I believe he means the country well, but he is not going to rescue us. That ain't going to happen. God is our hope, and to let God channel himself through us is our biggest hope, particularly if we don't want to see more stories like this every time we turn around. There is a lawlessness in our country. I believe it is a test run by the enemy, and I want to start at a national level with Katie Couric and this woman named Jessica Tarlov admitting Republicans did really something smart, something I've been begging Republicans to do for a long time, which is to make the smugglers in the big cities live in the world they're creating for others. They did that, Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis. Katie Couric and Jessica Tarlov admit this, and then I'll show you the de-evolution of an American city highlighted by a guy who is still succeeding to this moment in stealing a woman's house. She is not going to spend Christmas in her own home. Don't worry, he has a nice Christmas tree in there. We'll talk about this and how lack of wisdom led to these decisions. There's a product I hold in my hand. It's so small and it's so potent. It's called Wisdom. It's Bible-based herbal blend. Is just unbelievably tasty. I'm taking some now. And you'd think, wait a minute, you need your caffeine. You got to do your show. You're right. It does add to me a sense of, it's so good. It does. It tastes like honey. It adds a sense of calm, focus, mental focus. It helps harness your immune system, and it turns inflammation into something that actually helps your body. And the reason it's called a biblical herbal blend, because it was inspired when Dr. Patrick Gentempo was in the Holy Land, and he was smelling all these amazing spices and all these amazing herbs. And he was, of course, back there walking in the steps of where Jesus Christ walked. So he was in his Bible. And it occurred to him, my goodness, I'm smelling these spices and these herbs, and I'm reading about them, and they're treated in almost this sacred sense in the Bible. It's very famous. King David, after he made his horrible decision to have a woman's husband, because he ended up sleeping, well, didn't end up, he decided to seduce the woman and have sex with her, which ruined his house, and he said, wash me with hyssop, and I will be clean. There's many instances of herbs and spices treated this way. That's why this is a biblical blend. But Patrick Gentempo's a modern doctor. How did he modernize this? He made this in cold brew process, small batches, light and sound wave infused to lock in the potency. And I dare you, take some of this and tell me it's not potent. My daughter puts it in her coffee so she gets the coffee lift and she doesn't have the jagged edge. I think my wife takes it straight. She loves it as well. So get wisdom. Go to trywisdomnow.com/Todd. You're going to get 33% off at trywisdomnow.com/Todd. You're going to get a 180-day money-back guarantee, and you're going to get free shipping when you stock up on wisdom. It's trywisdomnow.com/Todd. trywisdomnow.com/Todd. I've always said that one of the things we want to do is either give the leftists what they want immediately. This is something I said in Seattle that freaked people out. Let them have what they want. They want these things, let them have it. Let the city of Seattle have government-run health care. Let them have zero youth incarceration. Don't fight it, give it to them. Make it happen quickly so people can go, wow, that was a stupid idea. They'd rather have us fight in many ways to make them roll it out over time so the effects don't become so clear. Jessica Tarlov and Katie Couric had a discussion about that exact tactic. Make smugglers in the big city live in the world they're creating for others.
On the immigration front, there was a tendency amongst Democrats, and especially Democrats who are discussing the issue, so people who do interviews or are part of the media, to minimize it over the first 2.5 years when there were a lot of people coming in here. And I thought that it was a stunt, when they started busing migrants. They go to Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
It was the smartest thing they ever did.
Well, it's interesting because I have a friend who lives in Florida, and I said, what did you think of Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott taking some of these immigrants and moving them to northern states? And she said, I thought it was great because nobody really was paying attention before that. And I do think that this untold story was the strain on social services and communities, particularly along the border, this influx, huge influx of immigrants was having. And I think the mainstream media, however you define that these days, kind of ignored that story to its peril.
They didn't just ignore the story. They said it was bitter, clinging racists who didn't like the BIPOCs. They pushed that narrative. And when it came time for people to see the migrants coming into their area, largely illegal immigrants, and they got to understand the scope of the issue, we had that famous statement from the people in the rich cities. Martha's Vineyard, we don't have the resources. We're a small city. We're a small town. So are a lot of these towns on the border of Texas, and even if they're big cities, they don't have the resources. I'm watching the beleaguered mayor of New York triangulating and moving and trying to find his position on politics and trying to shoulder up and lean into the Republican view on this because he wants Donald Trump's help, because the Democrats are targeting this guy, because he stepped out of the rhetorical reservation and began to criticize mass illegal immigration. Some other leaders, bosses on the Democrat side have done this. That's one issue that showed make people live in the world they're creating for others. Now, I'm not necessarily suggesting that we take the example of a guy named Steve Hickey. Steve Hickey, by the way, is apparently a fire commissioner. He apparently has a position of some government authority in the separate country of Washington State. He apparently makes, according to Andy No, an independent journalist, he apparently makes about $200,000 a year as an influencer in social media, going out and covering news stories and licensing the footage. And he's a guy who's apparently expert at finding ways to steal access to people's homes and live in them. And this happens with some regularity on the West Coast, with some real regularity. When people leave their houses in the West Coast, it's very common for them to make sure they even let people stay for free. They warn their neighbors. They watch each other's houses because squatters are a legitimate and real threat. If you're selling your house, sometimes you don't even want to put it on the market. You want to try private sales before it goes on the market because houses for sale that are evidently vacant often get squatted in. And in these separate countries, once someone's inside your house, they have as much legal authority to your house as you do. Because they can say, I'm renting. You have to prove they're not. In civil court, you have to sue them out of your house. And if they're experts at this, or they have the help of leftist attorneys, and many of them have help with leftist attorneys or from leftist attorneys, they will go through step after step after step to make sure they don't get taken out. Filing paperwork, burying you in paperwork, burying you in depositions. Filing bankruptcy. You can't kick me out of my house. I'm in a bankruptcy hearing. It can even happen with people's backyards or their properties. People with acreage have this happen. Groups of people move onto their land, establish residency by being there X number of days, establish a structure, and at that point, you can call the sheriff and say, look, this is my land. They built that structure down there without my permission. I want them off of my land. And the sheriff goes down, and guess what they have? They've got their own paperwork. Sometimes they have trained Marxist lawyers from the University of Washington on speed dial. So Steve Hickey, this reporting comes from a couple different sources. One, and they're both independent journalists. One independent journalist is a guy named Jonathan Cho. So if you're from the separate country of Washington, you'll recognize Jonathan's name. Jonathan had been a mainstream videographer with Como News. And he made the decision to offer fair coverage to the Proud Boys. What was fair? He interviewed him. When the Proud Boys were the most scary force in the history of the world, they were about to overthrow the country. They were on parade in Olympia. One of the Proud Boys had been shot by an Antifa member. And Annie No went down and decided to let some Proud Boys have their say, since the Antifa types always get their say. Jonathan Cho did that. Pardon me, not Andy No. So Jonathan went down, put them on camera, and they got to make a presentation, their view. Cuomo fired him. And in media circles, the rumor was Cuomo fired him for platforming the Proud Boys. Let me translate that. For giving someone who is the focus of a news story an opportunity to speak into the news story. So you're going to see what happened when King County Sheriff's deputies rolled up to a home owned by a woman named Katrina Freitag. And you'll see it's a beautiful home. I'll tell you, it's in a place called Ravensdale. And I invite you to try to feel what she must have felt as she rolled up to her home, saw a beautiful, probably 13 to 15-foot Christmas tree, could see her bathroom windows up there, where that guy gets to go take hot showers and lay around in her hot tub. I'll show you that in a second. This morning in the gym, I did this thing that I can't stand doing. God forgive me for saying this, I can't stand being around naked men. I hate it. No, it's gross. Alex, do you agree with me? Being around naked men is gross. But I had to shower because I don't want to come in here and have Alex abused by the fact that I worked out for 2 hours this morning. So I came in and I went into the shower and I got my Allen soap. And I brought my Allen soap into the shower. So there I am soaping up. And I'll have you know, is watermelon basil, not the most masculine smelling soap, but one of my favorites. And I set it up on the little shelf, proudly decided to show the logo, hoping that it would distract this other dude who was in the shower from the fact that I was also naked, because I can't stand that. Well, that didn't work. But what did work was when I came out of the gym and out of the shower, fully clothed, walked by, and the older lady with her husband, as I walked past, said, "You smell good." Her husband's right there, so I turned around and said, "What's your phone number?" I'm just kidding. I didn't do that. Honey, my wife's watching. I did not do that. She's standing there with her husband. And I got an opportunity to tell them, "Oh, I use a soap called Allen soap. Do you think I wouldn't do this? I do this." So I took out my little bar of Allen soap in the box and said, "I use this." I've never heard of that. I didn't stay there and make the soap pitch, but I said, check out allensoaps.com/Todd. You can make a decision. You continue to use, around naked men or not, soap that is made by a big company that hates you, or Allen's, made in America in small batches by a family with 3 generations of soap making expertise who make soap for one reason and one reason only: to hire people like Allen and Ian and Amy that the rest of the world would have tossed aside as useless eaters. They're not. They're God's kids. Go to allensoaps.com/Todd. You get 10% off all their products there. It's allensoaps.com/Todd. And maybe you too can find yourself in the deeply uncomfortable position of having an older woman look at you as you walk by saying you smell good, as her husband stands there saying, "What are you saying?" allensoaps.com/Todd. This is video footage shot by Jonathan Cho because he was told by Katrina Freitag she was finally going to get her home back.
We are outside Katrina Freitag's house, which is currently being occupied by Steve Hickey. We've been tipped off that sheriff's deputies will be coming to remove Mr. Hickey after the judge essentially ruled that he needs to vacate the property, that this does indeed belong to Katrina Freitag. All right, sheriff's deputies are now going in. They are going in.
I feel like finally the justice system has came forward and in my favor, and there's no turning back now. He filed bankruptcy paperwork on, I think, December 11th.
Yeah.
In the afternoon. Yeah, he failed to check the correct box that said he had a judgment for eviction. So he reported that there was no judgment, which is not accurate. It's fraudulent.
He has a Christmas tree set up in there, huh?
Set up, decorated. This is not a reality to him.
The fact that he didn't leave, though, shows what?
He's still trying to fight the system.
Almost, right? Do they give you a time frame on when this is happening? When he's going to have to leave?
Look at this home that this woman has used her life's energy to purchase and to make nice. The landscaping. Ravensdale's a nice area. She's probably got, I'm guessing in that area, you don't end up with lots that are under 3, 4, maybe 5 acres. It's a treed property. It's a landscape property. It's a great big home. And she has to stand outside her own home. Oh, by the way, she still has to pay the property taxes. I mean, she wouldn't want her house to get repossessed.
But it's today.
It is today.
Okay. I heard attorneys are squabbling right now. What are the attorneys fighting over at this point? We're talking about
The falsified documents that were filed for bankruptcy that have no grounds.
Your attorney's not letting up, right?
My attorney is not letting up.
And here goes the moving trucks.
They're not being told it's not going to happen. The attorney was able to stop it.
Are you serious? What's going on?
Well, they're canceling it.
No, she can move it herself.
Why?
Apparently, Steve's attorney is throwing out legal jargon to muddy the waters again. And so now it needs to go to the detective supervisor and then their attorney for more review.
So as of right now, are they going to wait until this is settled, or what's going to happen?
No, they're done. And they're going to have to reschedule.
This is incredible. Just an attorney threatens the sheriff's deputies, and they stand down?
Yeah. Seems like that's how it's happening.
So he's not coming out?
No, not today.
Now what?
We sit and wait. They said my writ is valid till February.
So what does that mean? He has to get out between now and February?
It might be rescheduled, yeah.
What if he's here after February? This is just a debacle. This is a failure, and again, the system.
Again, another Slimy Steve move.
He's got the stockings, Christmas tree. It's all set up. Hey, Steve, do you want to come out and talk? They're leaving. Wow. At least for now, Steve Hickey lives again.
Lives again.
Even though this house doesn't belong to him. So now it's only a matter of when he gets out.
Maybe.
Yeah.
God.
$5,000 it cost her for the movers. Gone. What was that Lizzie Warren said the other day about the guy who, the healthcare CEO, took his life? You can only push people so far. See, one day a squatter will choose the wrong house. I'm not hoping this happens, but it's going to. One day they're going to choose the wrong house, and you're going to take someone, to quote maybe the terminalist, who is going to be pushed to violence when he's spent his life perfecting the acts of violence. And it will end very, very differently. This guy's attorney is apparently named Benjamin Ellison. He's a partner at Salish C Legal PLLC. This according to journalist Andy No and journalist Jonathan Cho. Jonathan Cho did the main work on this. In fact, Jonathan Cho had an interaction with his attorney. Cho sent him a note trying to get some clarification. Hi, why is your client Steve Hickey still in Katrina Freitag's house even though the judge ruled in her favor? When does Steve plan to leave? Jonathan Cho wrote. Here's what this so-called attorney said in return. Mr. Cho, no comma, by the way, are you a journalist or a PR person paid for by some political advocacy group? You hold yourself out as the former, but if you're really just paid by someone to specifically target Mr. Hockey, he is misspelling the name of his client, Mr. Hockey, with unflattering stories, you should be transparent about your financial incentives in what you represent to be independent reporting. Going forward, please do not violate the automatic stay or take action reasonably intended to negatively affect my client's earning potential. If you're uncertain as to what is proper, PLS, consult with your own bankruptcy attorney. Ben Ellison. Seems like an implied threat, doesn't it? He's a guy who can't spell his client's name correctly in this email, but he is an attorney. I'm sure he's probably liberal. I mean, DEI and all. Now, Steve Hickey had talked with a former colleague of mine and a woman I consider to be an acquaintance, if not a friend, a woman named Brandy Cruz. Brandy does a program, a podcast, very successful, called Undivided. And a lot of it is Washington state-based, although a lot of it is interesting to the rest of the country because the separate country of Washington is such a freak show. So I'll show you an interaction she had with Steve Hickey, who decided to come on her program, of course, because Steve, according to Jonathan Cho, is a successful online influencer who makes $200,000 a year and, of course, gets to stay in free houses because he steals them. I also understand that he's a fire commissioner in the separate country of Washington state. Pure, utter corruption. Now, I don't know that it's corruption that caused a great big retailer weeks before Christmas to cancel a huge order of My Pillows, but it happened. And we want to be able to help out Mike Lindell because Mike is a guy who has shared his views on election integrity, views I happen to share in large part, and he's been punished for it. He's been punished with process as punishment through the government, having his cell phone seized, having his business attacked, being sued by mobbed up entities, in my judgment. So I don't know that this was an act of political activity, but it happened. The orders are canceled, and so here's the response. Instead of scurrying away and hiding, because that's not what Lindell does, he has created the biggest discount on the classic MyPillow in history. So you go to mypillow.com/Todd. You're going to get the classic MyPillow at $14.88. That's the standard size. It's never been that low. Queen size MyPillow, $18.88. King size MyPillow, $19.88. Body pillows at $29.88. Multi-use pillows at $9.88. You're going to see an extension of the money-back guarantee through March 1st, 2025. And if you've actually never used MyPillows, they're pretty extraordinary. They bond to you. They're going to come. They're going to be flat. Don't freak out. You put them in the dryer. They puff up. Immediately, I'm telling you, immediately lay down on the pillows and in the way that you like to sleep, and it will form to you. Over time, of course, they're going to lose that shape, so put them back in the washer and the dryer. Yes, you can wash these pillows for a long time. I've had my MyPillow for probably going on 10 years. So do this. Go to mypillow.com/Todd. Use promo code Todd. Get the standard MyPillow for only $14.88. That is the lowest price Lindell has ever offered on these. Use promo code Todd for discounts on the entire MyPillow Classic collection. Grab a gift that says you deserve the best comfort at mypillow.com/Todd. That's mypillow.com/Todd. So this guy who's apparently a stealer of houses decided to go on and have a conversation with Brandy Cruz.
Yeah, and that risk could be judge doesn't rule with you.
100%.
And if the judge does not rule in your favor, going back to the squatting claim, will you leave?
It was absolutely. If that's,
No
I don't have a
question.
choice at that point.
You're not going to make him go through some sort of crazy process to get you out, right?
Let's see what he comes back with as a ruling, but I will honor the court process. That's where I wanted this thing to stay.
Yeah.
One of the people in the live chat group just pointed something out, that this is an appointed sheriff. You saw the sheriff's deputies walk away because an attorney said mean things on the phone. There is no elected sheriff in King County anymore. The sheriff is appointed by one of the most rank politicians in history, a guy I call Smack Daddy Dow Constantine. For people who live in the world and not in Seattle, his name is Dow Constantine. He earned the nickname Smack Daddy because that's what we used to call heroin dealers. And in my judgment, he's one of the biggest dealers by proxy in history. He now picks the sheriff. The sheriff works for a rank politician, no longer for the citizens. These are the sort of sheriff's deputies who flee when an attorney says mean things. So Steve Hickey must be a poor guy down on his luck. He has to steal houses to have a place to live, not according to one of his fellow influencers in social media.
Everybody, it's me, Bo Shevasu, and
Steve Hickey.
Steve. You've probably seen this guy all over social media. Today, we are going to ask him some impromptu questions, not scripted. We're going to put him on the hot seat. First of all, why do you do what you do?
So I've been going out and filming, and then I licensed TV news, local and national, but then it kind of morphed into telling stories that the news skips or doesn't have time for.
Interesting. So you're not one of those guys with the $500,000 camera equipment that you see all over the place. how do you make money then? How do you pay for gas?
Yeah, so it's a mix. There is the station's paying and licensing footage, whether that be local or national. And then also for putting it on social media, putting it on Instagram and TikTok, I do get revenue money from there, and then also from some sponsorships.
That's cool. So you're not necessarily being bought off by a large corporation to sell a prescription medication during
No,
the
he's
advertisement.
completely up and up.
So I like that. So you're probably getting a more impartial view of local stories from this guy, as opposed to some of the major news stations. We won't dump on them too much. Okay, tell us what's going on here, right here, behind you.
So the Paulson building here behind me was built in the early 1900s, around 1914.
So he's there doing a so-called news report. Jonathan Cho estimates his income at $200,000 a year. A creature of digital. A creature who found a hole in the system and has exploited it and is stealing a home, and the cops say there ain't nothing they can do because an attorney said something mean to them. Yeah, it pales in comparison to a 15-year-old girl raised by digital. But all around in Seattle, King County, everybody knows that's Katrina Freitag's house. He's still there. Sadly, I think all around this girl who walked into that school and took those lives, I think people knew. She's always on her own. She's always sad. She's always on digital. The house has been through multiple divorces. Her mom is apparently a drug addict, according to her and some court documents. According to this report we quoted. No one stepped in. We need to step in, again, for the kids. And in the separate country of Washington State, what would it look like to have about 400 people show up and decide to shame this Steve Hickey every day until he gets sick of hearing people shaming him? I mean, he could call the cops. They might charge those people with trespassing. So next day, 400 new people show up, or maybe just 20. God warned us that the love of many would grow cold, that we would see the coming of the lawless one. I think Satan is paving the way for the ultimate lawless one, which makes it easy for us. Stand in the light of Christ. This is the Todd Herman Show. Please go be well. Be strong, be kind, and please do say a prayer for the victims of these murders.